Okay, my couture crafters, let's get into this card. Um, this first sheet that we're looking at now was my first attempt, and I'm using Sandcastle ink. And you know what? This ink is just too dark. I want a light, super light brown. And of course, I probably have it in a different brand. I just was trying to use my Catherine Poolers today for whatever reason. Probably because they're right in front of me, and what's right in front of me is what will get used. So I'm going around using this wreath builder. I have a few videos on how to use that. And then I decided to add the leaves on top, kind of staying with the same thing that I did for my previous card. But this was just too busy. It did not come out the way that I wanted it to. So I put that to the side and I decided to go back to using the Twilight ink, which is the same ink that I used on my last card. The only difference is this time I'm using cream cardstock. So this is a 4.5 by 4.5 piece of cardstock that fits right in the center of this wreath builder. I have a video on how to use a wreath builder and how to build a wreath builder. And we go all the way around, but I wanted to leave, the design was to leave part of the wreath off. So this is a stamp by Gina K Designs. It came in their last year's, I forget what the name of that set is. The I want to say it was their holiday set. It's kind of fall-ish. It's like my only fall stamp set, which is crazy. But I legit do not have any Thanksgiving or fall sets. So this one here I got last year and I'm still using it, which is good because I really feel like I've gotten my money's worth out of this. This came with some snowflakes too that were big and beautiful, and I feel like I definitely got my money's worth out of this set. Again, it's by Gina K Designs and it came in one of her kits. I think it's like Fruit of the Spirit kit. Her Fruit of the Season kit. So I used that large branch and I went all the way around and now I'm just testing the design and I'm like, okay, this works. It left a little gap and now I'm just placing the leaf where I want the leaves to start on top because I knew I kind of wanted to build the wreath like a real wreath. You know, it has the branches and then it has something on top of it. So this is my attempt at doing that. So I lined up the card where I thought it looked best and I stamped in order red, I think orange, and then yellow. So the first color I use is rouge, and then my orange, of course, is Mandarin Spice, and I'm using Sana, and they're all inks by Catherine Pooler. So here I'm just loading it up, and I'm going around again, closing it, making sure that I add even pressure, and then we're going to open it, and that's okay. I still think the Twilight ink is a little bit darker than what I really was going for, but it works. I thought it worked because the red is still clearly showing up on top of it. So I'm cleaning it off with a baby wipe because Catherine Pooler's inks have some kind of sorcery where you can pretty much just barely wipe it off and the next color will stamp beautifully without transferring the previous color. I'm just using baby wipes today. And after I finish baby wiping it down, I take my hand and just kind of wipe it down just a little bit. So here we're closing it again. And this time this is with the orange ink. And there we go. We start to build our wreath. Cleaning it again with the baby wipe. Then I'm probably going to take my hand and dry it off a little bit and go on to the yellow. So we tap, tap, tap for the yellow. And again, that color is Sana by Catherine Pooler. And we're going to close it. And that's what I like about this. If you're paying attention, you can see that I didn't rotate it. And I could see that I didn't rotate it. So we'll just open it back up and rotate it and then close it. So little by little, we work our way around the wreath. Baby wipe it. And now we're going to rotate it again. And there we go. So here is the thankful die that I cut. I cut this out with my Cricut, and I like what I see. I like the spacing, I like the colors, it feels fall-esque. We're in a good place right now. So putting everything up, I guess I could have cut that stuff out, but why not? So here I am removing this from my Cricut. I cut it 5 or 6 times. So I have the one that's there, and then I think I cut it 5 more times. And then I just started stacking them. So then I zoomed in so that you guys can see how I stack. I just take my art glitter glue with the special nozzle tip. And of course, I could have run this through my Xyron and you could do it that way too. But with the Xyron, you've only got kind of one shot. With wet glue, you can kind of wiggle it around a little bit. So I'm just wiggling it around and you just stack them. I think I stacked 4 or 5 on there. That feels like a plastic piece of embellishment. That's how seriously that sucker feels when you stack it. I really like that. So I cut a sheet of paper by 5 by 5. Remember, the cream cardstock is 4.5 by 4.5. And I knew I wanted to add some rust. That orange was so bright. And I knew I wanted to do blue and rust, navy and rust. So I'm cutting this cardstock down, this one by 4 3/4 and 4 3/4. So it gives us just a little peekaboo of the rust around the cream and then the blue. And that's what I was looking for. And I like playing with matting. You'll see what I do in just a moment, which is really extra, but it's me and I wanted to play with it. So let's see what we get here. I use the Tombow Mono adhesive, the runner. I like that. You can get it at Michael's, walk right in and grab it, and then grab that. The refillable 3 pack. I cannot stand their repositionable adhesive, but their permanent works fine for what I use it for. So I was kind of thinking about popping this up on foam tape and all that, but I figured there was enough dimension with that thankful. When I tell you there is dimension there, there is dimension there. It feels like a piece of plastic or cardboard or chipboard. So I'm just adding some more glue to the back and placing it off the side. And that was the design. I feel good about it. And here I'm just using a pen to kind of poke some glue bubbles that I saw. And there you go. And then I thought, let's be a little bit extra. So when you're matting, usually people cut things down a quarter less than whatever the original size is. I decided to play with this and cut this down, I think at 5 3/8, just so that you can see 1/16 around the sides. So usually you see 1/8, this is 1/16. It's just a sliver of color of that rust. I very rarely go back and use my scraps, so this was a great way for me to really eat up that cardstock. And can you see it? It's just a sliver. Use wet glue when doing this technique because you will probably have to reposition like I did. I was over just a little bit too far, and there we go. Now she's on the money. And there we have 1/8 borders around, and then we have the 1/16, which I think is kind of cool. Playing with matting, same thing that people do with photographs. They mat, and you can really make or break your focal image with the way that you mat your card. So I'm cutting the card down to 5 3/8 instead of 5.5. So I know that if I score this card at 5.5, it's going to be off a little bit. And I thought I would just trim it later, but it turns out I like having the base 5.5, which means that the top, there's more space than the right and left sides. Can you see it? There's more space top and bottom than there are left and right. And that just added to the design of the card. So I'm using wet glue just in case I need to wiggle a little bit here. And there we go. And we're just going to poke and poke until we feel like we've got it pretty much centered the way that we want. And again, I know that top and bottom is different. That is a Thanksgiving sentiment set by Tailored Expressions, but I just didn't love it. So I grabbed the same sentiment that I used on my last card. It talks about may no gift be too something. I don't know. This is a weird sentiment set. It's very Gina K. It's very grown up. It's not It's not whimsical. This is a nice, grown up set. It's these sentiments are deep. I don't know. But I went ahead and stamped it on a scrap piece just to make sure that I was getting a good impression. And I just stamped it on the inside there at the bottom right. I always stamp my sentiments someplace crazy. You guys ever see these hot buy stacks? I grab them at Michael's when they're on sale because I paper piece, and a lot of times you need a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock to make your bigger paper pieced whatevers. So I figured I would find, use this as an envelope because it's 12 by 12. And for a 5.5 by 5.5 card, you need a 9 1/4. Um, you need a 9 1/4 piece of cardstock, square. Sorry, somebody was calling me. So you need a large sheet of cardstock. So here I'm grabbing the branch and I'm using the twilight. And I figured I would make my own piece of pattern paper. So we're just going to go around and stamp. The first stamp I did was off the side of the cardstock, which kind of give it a more natural look, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't know how natural it can be, but it just makes it look a little more even and planned and whatnot. This cardstock is great in size, but it's coated and it's also textured, which means that this dye ink was sitting on top of it and it wasn't drying. And I was like, shoot, you get something. I got all the colors that I need, but now I'm like, it's a weird kind of cardstock. It's not their regular cardstock. I hate that they stopped making those large 12 by 12 stacks that matched the 8.5 by 11 stacks that we buy from Michael's. So annoying when they bought out these hot buys because it's just a different type of cardstock. But we're going to make do anyway. So I grabbed the leaf and I just started to make my own pattern paper. I was in the mood to stamp and I like what happened here. I like it. And I'm just going all around trying to apply even pressure. It's textured, which is fine. My issue that I'm going to run into is that it is wet. So I'm trying to be careful not to smudge it, trying to make sure that everything is kind of all over the place. However, when I score it for my envelope, I really need to look at where the focal image for the envelope will be. You'll see in just a second. I'm using a paper towel to kind of sop up some of that ink. I was looking like maybe I wanted to add navy blue dots or something, some texture, some background texture between the leaves. And I decided against it. I'm like, I'm always doing too much to never know when to stop. So I decided against that and I grabbed my heat gun just to add a little heat to hopefully make this stuff dry a little faster. It did not. It did not. It just, I'm not going to say that it didn't work. It's just, this is paper's got a coating on it. I'm not saying that it will never dry or soak in. It just was kind of sitting on the top, just enough for me to be very annoyed. So I bust out my 1 2 3 envelope punch. I love it. And we start to make our envelope. For this particular envelope, it's 4.5 that you start with. And I'm using that envelope, that little paper towel, just not to smudge stuff too much. And my crazy curls are in the shot. It's very difficult to see where I've scored on this paper, but I managed to score it without smudging too badly. And now we are going to fold over our lines. Again, I'm still using that paper towel, trying not to make too many boo-boos or smudges. And now I'm looking at how to fold this so that which side is the top, which side is the bottom. There it is, found it. And when I look at it, it's fine on the back, but on the front, there needs to be another leaf there. It's just a blank spot. And I decide, see, look, I'm like, where my thumbs are, I'm like, that needs to have another stamp. So I put a stamp down there. Now I'm measuring for a liner. I decided to use that first piece that I screwed up as the liner. Why not? It was sitting there and I felt like I wanted to put a liner on this. So I'm cutting it down to 1/4 less than the measurement from the top to the right. So from the top to the right, we already know was 4.5. So I'm measuring this at 4.25. This was a 4.5 by 4.5 piece of cardstock. I just trimmed off 1/8 around all the sides. I have a video on how to do an envelope liner. You measure from the top to the right. You take 1/4 off of that, and then here you punch at 4.25, which is 1/4 less than what the side is. Have a video on it. It talks about making an envelope liner. Then you put tape on the top half. You don't want to go past the halfway mark. And there you go. Fold it over, crease it, and now we have an envelope liner. So now we're just going to close it up. This tape does not love this envelope. It's just not holding super strong. So I grab my double-sided adhesive, my tape, and we close up the envelope with that, which is much stronger. And now we have a lined envelope. Is it a little on the busy side? It is. Do I love the liner? No, but it works. It works just fine. You guys, do not buy sealing wax from Amazon. That is the lesson here. Ugh, I'm so annoyed. This was so close to perfect. I used the same leaves that I used from the last video. They came from Recollections in like a little milk bottle. Again, that tape didn't want to work right there. It was just popping open. So I grabbed a piece of double-sided tape and I closed this up. Again, when I tried to seal this wax, it just was not great at all. So here we are. We're going to put a little glue down just to secure these leaves in place. This could have been so perfect. I really wanted the ombre to show. And there we go. I hate that this did not work out the way I wanted it to. I couldn't figure out what colors to use, so I just grabbed the metallic ones. These wax seals came from Amazon, and they are poopies. They don't really melt. They look like plastic. Look, it's all bubbling. Like, oh, it's so gross. I poured it anyway. You see that it's clumpy, and I sealed it. Did the seal work? Yeah, it worked, but it's just not the same as the nice seals from like ANZ Deco. So here's the reveal, guys. Not quite what I was going for, but you guys get the gist of it. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you all later.